Yep. So this has been pretty heavily requested. I'm gonna go over an updated video on entry triggers of standard deviation, how to find the right entry trigger. Okay. So entry triggers are mostly hold on. Entry triggers. They're mostly going to be CFTCs on the 2. I like to use the 2 to 5 minute. You can even go to the 15 minute. You can even go to the 15 minute if you want to get a higher time frame confirmation first, and then use a secondary entry trigger after that. All right, so CSDs to the 5 minute, 15 minute for a higher time frame entry. I rarely use IVGs. Okay, the reason I rarely use IVGs these days is because honestly they have not been the most optimal entries lately. I don't know if you guys could tell, but I'm pretty sure they've just been washed out. I mean, they still work obviously, but I'll rarely ever use an IVG because usually there will just be a better entry trigger, right? Like a CSD or you know, I'll use actually I'll go over an example of how I'll use the IVG entry later, okay? So CSDs, sometimes IVGs, and rejection blocks are also one of my favorite entry triggers. I do not use lower than 2 minute, okay? Do not ever use rejection blocks lower than a 2 minute. And rejection blocks here, they're going to be pretty subjective, okay? I'm going to go over an example of how to actually find a good rejection block entry instead of just entering off any wick, okay? And alright, so CZs, IVGs, rejection blocks, those are just my main entry triggers, okay? So first, if you want to use an entry trigger, you first have to find, the actual standard deviation that you're going to use, right? So for example, today, let's go over this. There wasn't really good leg for today, I'm not gonna lie, but okay. Let's just use this leg. All right. Let's say I hit -2, right? Let's say it had SMT at this low. We hit a PD array around here. Actually, let's just pretend that. You know what? Let's pretend that this would be a rejection block and we're reacting off the CE of it, right? Okay. So first of all, as you can already see, we have plenty of entry triggers here, right? We have the 5 minute change in state. Let me mark this out so you guys can actually see it. Right? This would probably be your first entry trigger, but there could also be a pretty good low time frame entry trigger, right? I mean, we had this 3 minute rejection block after tapping the CE, right? You could eliminate it right here, but as you can see, didn't quite get it. That's okay. That's why you also have the secondary entry trigger, right? So let me go from lower time frame up to the higher time frame. Okay? So like I just said, as you can see, we tap the CE of this, we create the rejection block. Okay? This rejection block, it does not get tapped, so you would have got edged here, right? If you got edged here, that's fine. That's why we have the higher time frame entry triggers, right? We have, this change of state delivery on the 3 minute. We have this change of state delivery on the 5 minute, right? So basically it's kind of like just a chain, right? You don't only want to be using this singular entry trigger on a singular time frame, right? Because then you're likely going to miss a move. Okay, you have to look. Okay, if you get edged on the first entry trigger, okay, that's fine. Now you look for the second entry trigger, which is on 3 minute or 5 minute, right? You enter on the displacement candle, or you can snipe your entry. You maybe get around here, get a good fill. Everything's going to be okay, right? And I mean, that's it. And for entry triggers, first of all, you want to make sure it actually hits your POI. Okay, you can't just be taking entry triggers off. Like let's say, where is it? Let's say this, for example, right? This changes state delivery. Why is this a bad entry? Well, one, we didn't even tap the CE yet. Two, I don't think there was even an SMT here. Yeah, there's no SMT here, right? There's no SMT. If there's no SMT, it's probably gonna be a low low probability entry, right? And this is especially if you don't tap the CE of this, PD array. Okay, so I would not take this entry trigger. I'd wait for the resweep, hopefully get the SMT, right? But, of course, you don't. Okay? So that change state delivery, you would just want to, cross that out. Alright? And for rejection blocks, I said I'd go over rejection blocks real quick. I'm going to go over that before I go over, the IVG entries. For rejection blocks, I have a few rules for these, okay? One, it has to be a fast and big rejection wick relative to the wicks around it. Okay? So what do I mean by this? Okay. So let's say, for example, let's say that, let me just draw it out real quick. Imagine this is a rejection block, okay? Imagine this is a wick, right? It's going down pretty slowly, and then all of a sudden, it shoots back up, right? And then this candle, it closes bullish. Alright, I'm not really sure if you guys can, really distinguish that. But this candle, it should be, if you want to use this as a rejection block, it has to be, a displacement candle downwards and then right back up. Basically like a volatility candle. And then the next candle after, it closes bullish if you want to use a bullish rejection block, okay? So this would be a bullish rejection block, and I find this pretty valid, right? And the wicks around it, okay, so this rejection block would be valid. Okay, let's say that this had a fast rejection. Look at the candles around it. None of these candles have wicks as big as this one. And not only that, but let's say that this did actually play out after we edged the CE of this rejection block, right? This would be a valid rejection block, and as you can see, we actually did get, almost a good reaction out of it, but it didn't quite get it because it was right before 9:30, so of course price is going to be chopping around a little bit, right? But that would have delivered pretty well if it weren't for the Judas swing at 9:30 open. So if it weren't for this nuance at 9:30, right, this rejection block would have been, probably the best entry of the entire day. You could have caught this entire freaking 600-point move up. Okay. Let me show another example. Okay. Let's delete all this. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Here's another good example, right? Let me just mark this out real quick. So we have this 2-minute rejection block here. Actually, 5-minute rejection block. Okay, let's say a 5-minute rejection block. Let's see if it's rejecting off of something, right? Because, of course it has to reject off of something. Okay, so it rejected this 15-minute order block. And, wait, actually, yeah, I don't think this would be a good volume imbalance to use, but we also swept this devil's mark that was left. So we swept this devil's mark, tapped into a 15-minute order block, so it's rejecting off of both of those now, right? So we swept a good draw on liquidity, and now we created a pretty big wick. Alright, now take a look at this wick compared to this entire leg here. Right? This entire leg, or even, you could use this entire move, this trending move down, right? There isn't a wicks that are big as this one, except if you want to use these, but these do not really reject off anything, so I wouldn't count it. Okay, account for this entire leg here. You can look on even the lower time frame. as you can see, there's no rejection wicks up until this one, after it taps the PD array and sweeps withdraw liquidity. So what that tells us is that, you know, this would be a good rejection block. Okay? So let me just mark it out here instead. You could, you know, I like to take rejection blocks that are less than 35 points. Okay? If it's less than 35 points, I won't be taking the CE of it. I'll just place it, you know, at the very base of the rejection block. And as you can see, we have a pretty good draw on liquidity here, right? Low resistance liquidity. This is a pretty high. This is a high resistance high, but it's okay because you do have low resistance up here. You target this high, would have top ticked it. That's good, right? It's pretty much a perfect entry right there. Not even using, you know, any other confluence either. Just using the rejection block as a confirmation, right? If you stack this upon standard deviation, you know, OTE, the volume profile, CVD, absorption to confirm the rejection block, like this could be one of the best. This is one of the best entry triggers ever. This is one of my most often used entry triggers, because if it's used correctly, then it's just literally, you know, one of the best entry models that I think is in trading right now, in my opinion. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over the IVGs now. Okay, so IVGs are pretty they're pretty nuanced, I'll say that. Okay, the only reason that I would take an IVG entry is because it's literally a perfect entry. Like, let's say right here, did we have SMT at this high? No, we didn't have SMTs. But let's just say that this had SMT. We just swept all this low resistance liquidity, and let's say we tapped into, you know, this 30-minute order block, right? This 30-minute order block. If there is absolutely like no other way for it to be a, you know, a rejection block entry or a 5-minute entry or even a CSD, if you miss a CSD, the only entry I have left is an IVG, then I would take it. Okay. Now, the reason I do not like IVGs is because of the RR you get. Okay, as you can see, we had this 5-minute inversion, but we have an absolutely gigantic stop loss, and you know, the only target would be this low right here, and you'd be getting 3.04 RR. But you have to be risking like super low, right? Just because of the stop loss right here. So to take an IVG entry, it has to be delivering from a high time frame PD array, 15 minutes or above, like this 30-minute order block right here. It has to have an SMT, and it has to have a strong closure. Okay, as you can see, this is pretty good engulfing candle that displays strongly below the IVG, so this IVG would be pretty good to take, right? But again, it still wouldn't be very optimal, you know, if you want to trade higher R, but it's still a trade. I mean, you can't be really complaining about money, right? It's still money, but this isn't the best entry trigger you could take, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure, yeah, look, there's even a change of state delivery on the 2-minute, right? You could have took this, maybe sniped your entry, you know, that's 4.68 RR instead, or even this 2-minute rejection block, right? You could, I mean, there's just so many, the CSD and rejection blocks are just the best for entry triggers, okay? So, to wrap it up, in first place, it's going to be rejection blocks, if you know how to use them, you know, completely correctly. Second place, it's going to be change of states deliveries, and third place, it's going to be IVGs, okay? So, that's the video on entry triggers, and yeah.